You know that moment when the air in a room turns thick, like it's holding its breath, waiting for the first crack in the facade? That's how it felt in the boardroom of Langford Provisions. High up in a Chicago skyscraper overlooking the relentless grind of the Loop, Ethan Hayes stood there, invisible as ever, his calloused hands tucked into the pockets of his rumpled suit jacket, the one he'd worn to too many late-night crisis meetings. He'd been the company's quiet guardian for 7 years, the guy who fixed the leaks in the supply chain while the executives sipped their artisanal coffees and dreamed up buzzwords. But today, as Victor Langford's will was read aloud by the gravel-voiced attorney, Ethan felt the weight of betrayal sink into his bones like lead. Victor, the founder who'd built this food distribution empire from a single warehouse in the 80s, had seen it coming, the rot in his own bloodline. His son, Landon, sat there smirking, already mentally redecorating the corner office, oblivious to the bomb ticking in that sealed envelope. Ethan didn't flinch when the lawyer cleared his throat and announced the addendum. In the event of any governance dispute, the old man read, his voice steady as a judge's gavel, my founder's vote transfers to the longest-serving operational leader, Ethan Hayes. The room froze. Landon's cousins shifted in their seats, their designer watches glinting under the fluorescent lights. But no one dared speak. Ethan locked eyes with Landon, seeing the flicker of confusion morph into something darker, disbelief, then rage bubbling under that polished Ivy League exterior. For years, Ethan had swallowed the insults, the dismissals, the way Landon treated him like hired help rather than the man who'd negotiated every vendor deal that kept the trucks rolling through blizzards and strikes. You're just operations, Landon had sneered once, during a strategy session where Ethan's warnings about compliance risks were brushed off like lint. That sting had festered, a quiet wound that Ethan nursed in silence, documenting every shortcut, every arrogant override that chipped away at the company's soul. The betrayal hit Ethan hardest not in the boardroom, but later that night, alone in his modest apartment on the outskirts of the city, where the hum of the L train rattled the windows. He poured himself a stiff bourbon, the cheap kind that burned going down, and stared at the flash drive Victor had slipped him months before his death. For when they forget what built this, Victor had whispered, his voice weakened by the cancer that was eating him alive. Ethan had trusted Victor like a father more than his own, who'd abandoned him young, leaving scars that made Ethan cling to loyalty like a lifeline. But Landon's rise felt like a knife twist, the prodigal son, fresh from a European jaunt and a fancy MBA, waltzing in to dismantle everything. Ethan replayed the moments, the layoffs disguised as optimization, the gutting of the quality assurance team that Ethan had built from scratch, the risky supplier switches that ignored federal regulations. Each one a betrayal, not just of the company, but of the invisible workers like him, the ones who bled sweat into the machinery while the family reaped the glory. Silence became Ethan's weapon. He didn't rage or confront, he waited, his heart a coiled spring of unresolved pain. In meetings, as Landon paraded consultants with their slick presentations, talking agile pivots and sunsetting legacies, Ethan nodded quietly, his notes a meticulous record of every flaw. He felt the psychological toll, the nights awake staring at the ceiling, questioning if his loyalty had been a fool's game. But the hurt fueled him, a slow-burning fire that whispered, they'll pay for underestimating you. When Landon pushed through a procurement change without proper sign-offs, violating USDA guidelines tied to their grants, Ethan documented it all. It wasn't revenge yet, just preparation. A shield against the erasure of his worth. The family company, once a beacon of hard-earned American grit, now felt like a house of cards built on entitlement. Ethan's silence masked the storm inside, the betrayal of being deemed expendable after years of sacrifice. The psychological unraveling as he watched lifelong colleagues get sidelined. The tension built like thunderheads over Lake Michigan. Landon, oblivious in his arrogance, hosted a vision lunch at a trendy downtown spot, toasting to his new era with champagne flutes clinking. Ethan was invited as an afterthought, seated at the end of the table like a forgotten relative. "We're evolving," Landon proclaimed, his voice dripping with false charisma. Ethan dipped his bread into the overpriced soup, forcing a smile while his mind raced through the clauses Victor had hidden away. That night, back home, the envelope from the will sat unopened on his desk, a talisman of trust. Opening the flash drive instead, Ethan reviewed the governance appendix, a legal backstop Victor had crafted in paranoia, foreseeing his son's hubris. It required no fanfare, just proof of disputes. And Ethan had 3 already: the unratified restructures, the bypassed audits, the procedural lapses that could tank their subsidies. The pain of betrayal sharpened his resolve. This wasn't about power grabs, but reclaiming dignity from the jaws of dismissal. Weeks dragged on, the office a pressure cooker of unspoken resentments. Landon avoided Ethan, communicating through curt emails that reeked of condescension. Ethan's team whispered in the break room, sensing the shift, the way projects stalled. Vendors called for clarifications. Regulators sniffed around unfiled reports. Ethan felt the psychological weight, the isolation of carrying Victor's secret like a buried shame. But the hurt propelled him, memories of Victor's quiet nods of approval, now contrasted with Landon's sneers, turned silence into strategy. When the first trigger activated, a frozen contract that exposed Landon's overseas pivot as a job killer, Ethan didn't celebrate. He felt the cost, the erosion of trust in a family he'd served faithfully, the internal fracture that mirrored his own scarred heart. The board murmured, but Ethan stayed silent, letting the dominoes fall from the shadows. The explosion came in an emergency board meeting, the air electric with unspoken accusations. Landon stormed in, demanding a vote to override Ethan's block. His face flushed with the entitlement of someone who'd never earned a scar. "This is my company," he barked, pounding the table. Ethan stood quietly by the window, the city sprawl below a reminder of the real America, gritty, unforgiving. The lawyer, a stoic veteran of corporate wars, unveiled the clause with clinical precision. Victor's video testament played, his frail voice echoing, "If blood forgets the backbone, let the one who held it stand." Landon's world cracked. Eyes darted. Allies faltered. The vote swung against him. Ethan's proxy votes tipping the scale like a judge's hammer. The betrayal reversed. Landon's face twisted in shock, realizing his dismissals had forged his downfall. Ethan felt no triumph, only the hollow ache of necessary destruction, the price of choices that severed ties forever. In the aftermath, the company trembled. Press releases were yanked, partners panicked, and federal reviews loomed like storm clouds. Landon confronted Ethan in his reclaimed office. Voice of venomous hiss, "You stabbed me in the back." Ethan met his gaze, the years of swallowed pride surfacing in a quiet retort, "No. You erased me first." The psychological toll hit Landon hard. His swagger crumbled into isolation, a sabbatical that screamed exile. Ethan, now operational steward, bore his own scars, the loneliness of power earned through pain, the silent regrets of a fractured legacy. He walked the warehouses at dawn, reconnecting with the forgotten workers. But the victory tasted bitter. A reminder that revenge extracts its pound of flesh from everyone. Months later, in Victor's old office, a hidden safe yielded final notes, one a stark warning to Ethan. Trust isn't won, it's guarded. The other, sealed with his name, remained unopened, a testament to unresolved wounds. Ethan locked it away, choosing silence over revelation. The company stabilized. But the cost lingered, the betrayals echo in empty board seats. The psychological shadows of choices that rebuilt an empire on the ruins of family bonds. Revenge didn't heal, it balanced the scales, leaving everyone to pay the quiet price.